So we are over there now. We are live.
All right.
Okay. Well, happy hour.
Yeah, happy hour to you. I have my sparkling water here.
I know the craziest thing is my cup is empty. I'm like, oh
Well, if you need to cut
no,
yourself
no,
out for a second
it's
while I
okay.
chat away.
No, no,
Go.
no. I'm so glad that you are able to come, but I'm even more excited because we're going to talk about the Akashic Records. And I know so many people have questions about this. Actually, Rena just said, yay. She's in the chat room. Hi,
Oh, hey
Rena.
Rena, thanks for all your questions.
Yes. So I know we're going to get into some of the, I would say, I guess, like expanding people's understanding about the Akashic Records because there is a, a bigger idea that it's just to go in about our past lives. So before we get into that, though, I just want to check in with you really quick. How has your week been? How are you been feeling energetically? Everyone's been like, ah, how
Well,
are you?
I know there's a lot of going on right now, and I have been in up and down in that for a while, and like the last full moon really kicked me in the backside.
Mhm.
And the way it usually kicks me is with not sleeping well enough. And for me, that just really you feel like I just woke up and I have to start my day, but I really didn't sleep all night, which I'm
Right.
sure isn't true. That's just how you feel. But I here's what I'll say. I mean, you know this about me, Yolanda, is that I've done Kundalini yoga for years.
Yes.
And I really kind of barely was doing any of my practice. A lot of the time since I've moved to North Carolina, I was processing so many other things and I just kind of let it go by the wayside. And this week actually has been better for me because I got back to my practice.
Oh,
I could,
okay.
yeah, and I've just felt like I can't even tell you exactly what's different, but I just feel a little bit more buoyant, which is one of my favorite words. It's just,
Yeah.
I feel like things for me personally don't feel so heavy, but it's 100% correlated with, a week ago that I went, wait a minute, it's time to get back and just even do anything with my
Yes.
Kundalini practice. They talk about it being the yoga of happiness. And for me, that's absolutely true. It's just like I just feel better about myself, about life. I handle things better. So I think it's been a week, but for me personally, it's been a better one than I've had in a long time.
I'm impressed that yoga can make you feel any kind of joy or happiness. Because when I did my yoga teacher training, we had one week where we focused on Kundalini yoga and the Kriyas. I was just like, if I can't put my arms down in 2.5 seconds, I'm gonna cry. I think you really have to get used to, yeah, it probably has to be a consistent practice before the joy comes because it was tough.
Yeah, but let me be transparent here. When I do this, I did maybe 5 or 6 different Kriyas this morning.
Hmm.
One of them is for 11 minutes, and there's no weird arm holding things where you think your arm is going to break off or you're going to die. Your mind definitely tells you those things
Yeah.
are going to happen. Um, and there's some other ones that I could take out longer, but because especially my shoulder muscles aren't up to snuff, I'm doing it for much shorter than those maximum amount of times right now, which, you can do it that way. Like maybe not in a class led by somebody else, but
Yeah.
at home, me sitting here, my own little space, I can do it for as long as I want.
Yes. Yes. Okay. That makes more sense.
Yeah.
Well, I had to say, yeah, this week it started out. I actually did an energetic clearing on Monday, like a deep, deep, deep one. And then I felt the effects of that on Tuesday, where I was just like cranky, stuff was moving and I was observing it. Then Wednesday and yesterday was kind of coming back up out of that. Um, yeah, so I felt so much better, 100% today. But I know a lot of people are preparing also for the new moon tomorrow. I actually interviewed someone earlier today for the Reiki Summit, and she does a lot of shamanic work. And she was saying about a fire ceremony that she's going to do. Just want to tell you really quick we have Robert, Nellie, and Roslyn, all saying hello in the chat room. Let us know how you all are doing this week energetically. Let
Yeah,
us
would
know.
love to hear.
I have seaweed on my mouth. I was gobbling that up before we started. But okay. So, Holly, please tell us about the Akashic Records. And, one of the things I would like to know first is what your point of view of it was before you actually learned any process of going in. Did you hear the rumors? Like, what were your thoughts or ideas about it prior?
Yeah, that's a great question. Nobody's ever asked me that question before. I love it. Um, Before I said yes to it, I had been hearing about it from particularly a couple of friends that I was in a healing business with, and they were trained in it and they loved it. And I thought, wow, that sounds really cool. But it wasn't a yes for me. It's just like, that sounds really cool. But I never asked them more. And X number of years went by, not tons, but some time went by, and then another friend told me that they were learning it or had learned it and were now in a teacher training program. And there was something that just lit up about it for me.
Yeah.
And it was just like I knew that I needed to do it. And what I knew initially was very vaguely was it was could be used for healing, and I think there was a lot of focus at that time, and this was, I don't know, about 15 years ago or 16 years ago, and things have really changed in the world of the Akashic Records since then. But at that time, it was really a lot of past life conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. How
Like you get
familiar?
to find out what your past lives are, and from the perspective of healing, not just information gathering.
Right. So
You know,
I want to ask you about that, but I also never asked you, just curious, really quick. Did you ever do any research or were you ever interested in the work in the Akashic realm by Edgar Casey? Have you heard of
oh,
the
yeah,
sleeping?
I
Yeah.
have never pursued that. I just know his body of work
Yeah.
came from the Akashic Records.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was
And
just curious.
and yet, you know, one of the things about Edgar Casey's work, and I'm absolutely not an expert on this, so probably listeners know 18 trillion times more than I do, but he was considered the sleeping prophet. So he
Right.
literally went into a trance, brought through all this information that people were recording and transcribing. He himself didn't remember what he was, he wasn't conscious during that, so he wasn't connected with what was coming through him until afterwards. And and so there was, I would say, like a human disconnect
Mm,
because he wasn't, I mean, yes, he went into this trance, and there's obviously this tremendous body of work that's still relevant to this day
yeah.
came through. So it was really remarkable. What was also different about his time was that he was an anomaly.
Mm,
He wasn't teaching people necessarily like in a wide scale way to do what he did. He was special.
yeah.
He was, a unicorn in that way, in all the nicest ways I could say that, very unusual. Where time has gone on and we've, gone through a lot of spiritual awakening. And so it's more accessible to everyone now in a way that was different when he was bringing through all of his information.
Right. Well, this is another thing, and I know we're going to get into, I promise everybody, about the more expanded view of the records and what we can access in that realm. But then I have to start by asking you, because I have watched you evolve in your teachings around the Akashic Records and even your personal practice. Can you talk about when you first started, were there, I want to say, like, parameters that were taught to you? Like, did the teachers you had at the beginning, did they tell you there was a limit on what you can access? Did you have any kind of just limitations that may have been imposed by teachers that you don't necessarily follow now?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I don't consider that necessarily a shortcoming of where I came from and what I
Right.
initially learned. It was actually, I think sometimes it's really good to have some bumper guards.
Mhm.
And it was very real and appropriate. And even those bumper guards could still be very relevant today because, the Akashic Records is such a rich dimension, that we could work every day in it for the rest of this life and we wouldn't have scratched the surface of our own records and what
Yeah.
we can do there for ourselves. But yeah, it's transformed. And since the 1980s was, this time when, I won't get into all the spiritual history, but like the harmonic convergence, there was just like a lot of boom opening. The World Wide Web came on, like all this explosion of information and consciousness and all these things. And it was at that time that people were given or downloaded ways to individually access the Akashic records.
Mm.
So really you could say, well, that was a long time ago. Well, not really. I mean, you're talking about 40 years.
Yeah.
So it's not that long ago that basically every person like you or I, just an ordinary human being who isn't an Edgar Casey, can access the records. Or historically in the past, it was what you would call the spiritually elite.
Mm.
We all have what it takes right now to access our records. And so just that ability was so huge in that time. But my understanding of the records has evolved from my own work in the records.
Yeah. Well, can we talk about that first, just to paint a picture for people who may or may not be familiar with what the records are? I think it can sound kind of confusing. Like, am I going somewhere? Like, am I going to, where am I going? Right. So, how do you experience it? Do you think of it as like a level of consciousness, a realm? How do you describe it?
Well, the way I view it, if this gets sort of definitional about that word Akashic, which the root is Akasha, is a Sanskrit word, but that word represents this primordial energy. So it's essence energy. We're in it all the time.
Hmm.
Like right now, you and I and anyone listening in whatever time zone and whatever time period they listen, we are all right now in our Akashic records because the Akashic record is created as we live our lives.
Hmm.
I mean, they say every thought, word, and deed. The thing is, everything we do, everything we think, everything we say, just our daily ordinary life gets recorded in this very, very highly refined energetic field.
Yeah. So
And
would
everyone
you,
has one.
well,
And
that's the part I wanted to ask you too, because when we hear it that way, it sounds like almost like there's like like these books of souls or soul records or something in that lane. But there's other things that can be accessed within that realm. So does it all tend to have this idea of like there's just a bunch of books, like as if it's a library? Or how do you experience it?
yeah, I mean, I feel like when we equate the Akashic records to the library, it helps us in our human form.
Mm.
I mean, honestly, it's relatable to
Okay.
say, you know what, there's this repository of the information of you. And look at spiritual texts. They talk about God's book of remembrance, and there are these terms, many different terms that have transcended throughout time. That there's some knowing that it's recorded somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, when I go in the Akashic records, I've never seen books, I've never seen shelves, I've never seen a library. But that's me. I've had many, many clients say that that's what happens when they enter their Akashic records. They do feel like they're in some sort of library, and any iteration of a book floats off the shelf and magically opens in front of them, like it's levitating, if you will. I've had clients say there's like a podium or a dais there, and there's a book there that's already open and they know it's their book. I think what any of those things are ways for us to access the information, but I believe it's in the field.
Yeah.
It's in the field.
Yeah.
And because the field contains all that is.
Right.
And if we go to, quantum scientists and what they say is like, it's the unified field. It contains everything. So I believe that's what we're accessing. But to go back to your question, like, I believe it's when I'm entering my Akashic Records or anyone is, we're not traveling to some other place like we say we're going to the library to go check out books,
Right.
right? It's we're in my understanding of it is we're here in our 3D consciousness awareness. I mean, because our five senses are really potent things to keep us focused here. So when we open into the Akashic Records, we're including more of what's already there.
Hmm.
So, and that you call it, it's a more refined energy. It's our soul's energy. We tap into that awareness. But again, I'm not traveling somewhere else. I'm shifting my human awareness to include more.
Yes.
So I still have my human awareness, my 3D awareness, and I'm including more of that soul level truth for me to understand myself, my life, my choices, everything through that lens, which isn't consciously available in our everyday human life.
Yeah.
Now,
Well,
you want to hear a caveat about this?
yes, please.
As we continue to evolve and grow and awaken, if you will, in this awakening process, we're not going to need methods to access the Akashic Records anymore. It's just going to be a natural thing for us.
Yeah.
So I view this time period, and you look at it like, okay, let's just say in the 80s, it like really woke up for everybody, if they want to access their Akashic Records. Like, we're all spiritually special enough to be able to talk to our soul. We're in a transition time, and so we need some support. We need something, whether it's a prayer, whether it's a meditation, whether you do it on purpose, whether you get there by accident. This is a transition time, and as we evolve, we will naturally be tapping into that all the time.
Okay. So then it's funny because there are
I don't
certain
normally talk
points.
about that, but
Yeah. And there are certain points I know that we're going to get to, but I mean, you're just saying a lot of juicy stuff. So one of the things you just mentioned is, this conversation with our soul. And I guess it's good to just say too, there are different, like you mentioned, different ways to access the records. People have different ways of describing them, all of these different things. And so, yeah. But with that, how do you view it in terms of like that? Are you having direct communication with your soul? Do you feel like there's a liaison, like an Akashic guide or these sorts of things? What have you noticed in being there? And is it different person to person?
um, I think everyone has a unique experience, and I think there's some themes that are consistent for everyone, and then everyone works it and develops if they want to stay, in that learning mode with it, where you're going to find your way
Yeah.
with it in your unique way. You do have a team of guides in there that are specific to work in your journey as a soul, which you could say, well, even my spirit guides in my everyday life, they're about me and my soul. They are, but these ones are, I'm going to call them specialists relative to your soul's journey in the Akashic Records, and they do guide you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
So,
so when I'm in my Akashic Records, it's, I don't feel it this specifically anymore, but that's who I'm receiving from.
yeah. Well, and I get like, of course, we may all have a different way of experiencing it personally. Just like you said, some people see a library, some people don't. But when you're working with, because you've worked with countless clients now at this point, and when you go into different people's records, do you personally, as a reader, do you have a different experience of how different people's information may come through to you?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, right when I finish the invocation, the first thing I do is I take a couple of moments to tune into their Akashic, because I'm in their Akashic records. And when I open somebody else's records, I'm interacting with their spirit guides, not mine.
Yeah.
And I shouldn't say spirit guides because I know that can get confusing. So I call them the soul guidance team. The guides that are in their Akashic records, I'm not interacting with mine, I'm interacting with theirs.
Yeah. Okay.
And this is maybe jumping the gun a little bit, but I'm going to just say it because we're kind of free flowing here,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Is, in this time of our awakening, and one of the main things we're doing, and it includes the Akashic records, but just anything else that we're doing to heal, awaken, move to the next level of our potential, is what we're learning to do is shift from only having other people tell us what to do, when to do it, how to do it, if we were right, if we were wrong.
Right.
And that's our historic model. But during this awakening, we are waking up to the fact that we are still connected also. So we don't have to, we can, but we don't have to have an intermediary.
Right.
And so we're learning that that wisdom has always been there and it's always been available, but we haven't been conditioned or taught that it is, that we've always needed somebody else who knew better in one way or another to guide us. And when we're in groups like that, whether it's a religious group or a social group or whatever kind of group where you have that leader, there is that sense of they're further down the road or they know more than me. And I must follow what they say exactly to get their results, if you will.
Yep.
But we're moving into this time where we are becoming more self-aware and really having more opportunity to tune into of like, oh, this is why I'm here. And this is why I feel the way I do. And it may not be the same as everyone else or everyone else in my group, but this is the sweet spot of where, people, I mean, it's such a common thing when I work with people in the Akashic Records, they want to know what their purpose is.
Uh,
And it's not something from outside of you, it's something that comes up from within. This is a digression. We won't go into it too much right now, but it has nothing to do with your job necessarily. We want it to, but it doesn't. But that idea of like, if you want to know that, tap into where that information actually is.
yeah. So you bring up another good point, and we will come back around to purpose because that is a huge one. I mean, like we can't, you just gave like the teaser of all teasers, like, oh, purpose, yes, but we're not going to touch that. No, we'll go
Well, I mean,
back.
we could do 2 hours on purpose.
Yeah, I'm sure. But I have to ask you, and I want to let everyone in the chat room know too, if you have questions for Holly, please feel free to chat them or type them in the box. Um, I was going to ask you, oh, psychic readings. So a lot of people may hear this, and let's say they've never gone into their records before, and you're saying how in this awakening, we all have this ability, this accessibility to even access and read our own, right? And even that's a question like reading, because that can sound so literal to people. But that aside, what would you say is the difference from like going in our Akashic records versus a psychic reading? And does someone have to be psychic in order to read their records?
Great question. Okay, so no, first of all, simple question or simple answer is you do not have to be psychic. We're all psychic. And so to me, it's more like, have you developed what you feel like your psychic abilities to the place that you feel comfortable, that you could feel, I'm going to say, worthy of being in there. If anyone has an interest and they want to practice, you absolutely can do it.
Yeah.
So it's not about how developed your intuition is. I get that question all the time, or I'm newly awakened. I haven't figured out all my clairs yet. It doesn't matter, Because guess what? Working in your Akashic records develops those.
Yeah. Oh, oh,
I mean,
it
when we
really
think of,
does.
what was that?
So yes, it does.
And just think about it. If you think about, the Akashic record is the record of your soul's journey, your soul's history. Guess what? Of course, we can go in there and talk to that and interact and source from that and get clarity and getting soothed and getting vision and, moving forward, like all of that. We absolutely have the right to be there. Now, just because I don't want to, okay, everyone has the capacity to do it.
Hmm.
Not everyone will.
Right.
Just like everyone has an Akashic record. You don't have to believe in it. You just
Yeah.
do. You
Yeah.
do. It's just part of what we have a record. And so not everyone would be curious. Not everyone would want to. And it does take practice. I'm never going to lie to people. And like my own experience, and then again, I don't even know how many people I've taught and thousands of people I've worked with over the years, that some people pick it up right away and some people need to practice longer.
Yeah.
But everyone can.
Yeah.
Everyone can.
Thank you for your honesty. I really appreciate that because a lot of people don't just give it to you direct as it is, but it's good to let people know that it is possible, even if it doesn't seem um, like an immediate thing. And that was my experience too. We'll talk about that later. But there's a couple of questions in the chat box, and one of them relates to something I wanted to ask you. So I wanted to ask about your personal, like building relationship to going into the Akashic records, like the benefit of being consistent and how that can nurture like a relationship to going into that space. But the question is, can automatic writing be a part of connecting with your Akashic records?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first of all, I write always when I'm in my records.
Mhm.
So is it automatic writing? Is it not? I never think of it as automatic writing because I think I'm transcribing a conversation I'm having. But it's nonverbal conversation. It's an intuitive conversation or psychic conversation. I didn't answer your psychic question. I'm sorry. We'll have to get back to that.
Yeah, yeah.
And so you could go in your records and automatic write. And for some people who drop into a space to do automatic writing, they may naturally be going into their Akashic records.
Yeah.
Because I teach people how, with an invocation, how to go in the records. And there are lots of people out there teaching this. This is not unique. Lots of people teaching lots of ways to access the Akashic records. I don't think any way is better than another. I just think, you know what? Find what works and that brings you joy and it helps you feel like it has meaning to you, and do that,
Yeah.
right? It doesn't matter how we get in there and how we work in there. But those are methods if you want to go in and you want to know that anytime I do this, I will absolutely get my records.
Yeah.
I can count on it. Where there are people who I've worked with over the years who say they pop into their records when they're doing Reiki or a meditation or in hypnosis, in daydreaming or night dreaming or automatic writing or in a massage. I mean, it just over and over. I've had many, not tons, but it's been memorable enough that it's happened in classes I've taught where people say, wait, this is the Akashic Records? I didn't know that's what it was, but I've been doing this in my meditation for years, and they could feel the energetic similarity to the
Right.
Akashic Records and where they end up in their good meditations.
Yeah.
So the reason for methods, if you will, of going in and working in your records is the ability to say, I want to go in my records. I don't want to hope I get in the right meditative state today. I don't want to hope that like it was when I was on that mountaintop watching the clouds and I dropped into this daydream state and I knew I was there. We don't want to necessarily trip into it. And so when we want to get consistent, then that's what the methods help with. But
Yeah.
we can get in and be in all kinds of ways.
So I have to ask you this too, because even if it's not necessarily considered like an automatic writing, how important is it though to, train yourself to get out of the way and just let the information come? Like to say, not to let your analytical jump in and go, is this true? Does this make sense? Like, how important is it to just let whatever's coming through come through? Like, do you read as you're going or you wait until the end?
What I'm writing?
Yes.
I know for me personally, it's not, I'm totally 100% connected with what I'm writing in the moment, and I might never look at it again once I read
Yeah.
it. For me, writing in the Akashic Records helps me stay focused in the records. If I'm not writing, I tend to float off into the cosmos.
Yeah.
Now, some people can't write when they're in their records. They feel like it pulls them out because they're doing something so human.
Yeah.
So, we have to just kind of figure out those things on our own about how that works for us. But it can be fun to look back because we may not consciously remember everything that we received in that moment. So again, it's like when I work with people and teach them, it's like I can give you lots of suggestions and you play with them and find what works for you. I think there are definitely some early learning guidelines for success, but
Yeah.
ultimately we all find our way with it.
Yeah.
So I don't believe in a lot of regimentation, except that when you're learning, if you follow these things, like I like to teach in my classes things that will shorten your learning curve.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a lot of what I teach in my classes now are things that nobody taught me initially, and
Hmm.
I learned, and it made a huge difference. And so I want to teach people who are ready to hear it right from the beginning to, again, shorten their learning curve because we'll be consistent with it when we feel more success.
Yeah. And I will say, it's funny when I saw that question because I remember even years ago when I would speak to you, sometimes you'd be like, oh, I just got out of, like, you would have like this morning ritual of like out on the patio with your morning cup of whatever and just going into your records with your journal. I can't even imagine how many journals you have just from going into your records. But
Boxes.
the boxes, yeah, that's actually not shocking coming from you. But I'm curious too. There's another question I'm about to ask you from the chat room. But with what you're saying, what do you do in the records? Like, so do you only go in with questions? What is our state of being? Like, can you just sit in there? What can you do?
That's a great question. I mean, it depends on what your intention is. I definitely love to go in to, okay, so my best days are days that I open my Akashic Records. I sit there maybe for a few minutes. I'm not asking anything. I'm just in this space of my Akashic Records and I close my records and get out. I'm not asking for anything. Now, this is more basic than what we've talked about so far because we kind of jumped in at the deep end here with, so the Akashic Records is the field of the Akash is the field of what we're all envisioning, striving for, and desiring. And you could call it God, source, spirit, energy. And what are those qualities? It's love.
Mm.
And what comes with that energy of love is there's a gentleness, there's a non-judgmentalness, there's a kindness, there's a compassion, there's an understanding. And those are core energies that are the Akash. And so when we're in our Akashic Records, that's what we're sitting in.
Yeah.
Energetically, we're vibing, if you will, with the field of the Akash that's that. And we're energetically aligning with it. Why? Because we're in there.
Hmm.
But here's the other piece with this. Those are the essential energies of our core.
Yeah.
Also, our soul, our spirit are all the same energy. So I feel like we just get a little bit more in alignment with that and kind of hold it in our human space a little more easily. Now, that's not something that was taught to me. That was just something I discovered. There are some people who say you shouldn't meditate in your Akashic records. I say try it and see if you feel better, then do it. Like I don't know why we wouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
By and large, we go in to the Akashic records with a purpose that we have chosen, not saying to our guide, I have a personal bias against the question, tell me what I need to know.
Mm-hmm.
That's abdicating your sense of empowerment because we go in with some questions. It could be one question. It doesn't have to be 35 questions. And they're questions about us, not somebody else. Like, I'm in my Akashic records. What's wrong with that neighbor of mine? Or, my boyfriend, what's wrong with him?
Mm-hmm.
In the Akashic records, it's a record of you. So you ask your questions about you. Now you can ask about your crazy neighbor or your boyfriend who's not doing whatever with you, but from your perspective, what more can I know and understand? We're adjusting ourselves because we're finding out and going deeper with ourselves, not trying to have some spirit guide. And this is kind of where the psychic part comes in. We're not getting information from the field at large, we're getting information from our soul.
Mm-hmm.
And so the questions point our guides to what are we going to talk about today? Oh, not just whatever you want to talk about, but I have this on my mind. Now, this is success tip. I know this is way ahead of time, but I love to talk about this. I don't care who you learned from, who you might learn from, it doesn't matter. When you're learning the Akashic records, I absolutely know you have some wild, deep, gut-wrenching questions you want to ask. Everyone does.
Mm-hmm.
Don't do those in the beginning. Please don't. And the way I like to say it, you may have a dream to climb Mount Everest, right? You don't say, I'm going to do that today and hop on a plane and do it tomorrow. What do? You start making a plan, you start training, you're doing smaller things along the way to build up your capacity to hold the energy to do that really incredible feat, right? So what we do in the beginning, and these are some of the things I love to teach, are smaller, more immediate, more rewarding, more relevant to right now things as we're building up our muscles of understanding how to even have a communication relationship with our soul guidance team.
Yeah.
And learn how we're receiving information from there. So we want to go in with small, gentle questions. And I know we all want our big, hairy ass questions answered first. I get it. But we want to be able to build up so we can receive the right information.
And what about truth, Holly? Because, like I always jokingly tell people, like, don't go to Oracle or Tarot if you don't want to know the truth. Like, don't ask something that you don't really want to know about, kind of question. When people go into the records, even though those tend to be, again, maybe in some regard, a different type of question, do people ever have a hard time with what comes through the records? And how do you deal with that? Like, do you have clients that are like, no, that's not what I wanted to hear? Or do people tend to, I want to say, like, maybe even feel held in the energy of the records and it's more digestible?
Um, Most of the time, at least the way I work in the records, because I don't know about other people, is again, this filter, if you will, of love, compassion, and understanding. There's never the need to be harsh.
Hmm.
critical, judgmental, like, what the hell's wrong with you?
Yeah.
Like, wait, what? Like you're going to hear that from your guides. Like, oh, why didn't you do that? There's no harshness. It's like it meets us where we're at and helps us gently move us on. And without that judgment in terms of rightness and wrongness. And so the truth can be there, but it's not heavy handed,
Hmm.
or at least not the way I work in the records.
Yeah.
That maybe there are people who do that. That's just not how I initially learned. And it also doesn't resonate with me because I also feel that if we just look at human behavior and human experiences and human interactions, by and large, none of us do well being chastised, criticized, judged harshly, and not respected.
Well,
Most of us
not the
collapse.
criticism so much, but say for example, there are some people who go to, and if you hear the word reading, a lot of people will assume you're going to give me something predictive, right? And so I guess a good question to give people a clear picture around this is, let's say someone didn't really fully understand what you ask in the records or what you would go on the records for. And so I come to you and I say, when am I going to meet my soulmate? And so, how would you redirect that to be more aligned with perhaps what we can access soul level in the records? And are people okay with that type of illumination instead of you saying, "Oh, Billy's going to come in March," you
Yeah.
know?
Well, I mean, on a really practical level, when somebody registers for a session with me,
Yeah.
now they may not read it, but I would say 90 or more percent of my clients actually do.
Hmm.
They get access to a page on my website that talks about how to prepare for your session.
Yeah.
And it talks about the fact that it's not predictive. It talks about the best type of questions to ask. So, and they get that as soon as they register. So people have time to ponder what
Yeah.
their questions are, especially through that filter, because, when am I going to meet my soulmate is definitely a predictive question.
Yeah.
And those aren't, and they're based on the idea that things are set in stone,
Hmm.
marked on a calendar. It's going to be this person at this time in this place. I mean, I way back in the day, I don't get this question anymore, but like I had early on some clients say, "Well, I need to know when I'm going to die."
Oh, wow. I would not want to ask that question.
Well, here's the key with it. It's really guidance we're receiving, and guidance is not what I in a silly way call talents. You're not being told what to do.
Yeah.
That you have guidance because the Akashic Records is not a substitute for your free will.
Hmm.
There's nothing you hear in the records that you're required to do anything. Hear it and follow it or not.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, and because we literally have free will and we came to this dimension because it has free will. We
Yeah.
want to live with free will. So we may be curious, and underneath those questions like that, like, is my boyfriend going to ask me to marry him? Or is the guy in the cubicle, why am I picking on women right now? Is the woman in the cubicle down the hall at work ever going to, I think she's my person. When is that going to happen? There's usually some questions underneath it that
Yeah.
we want to touch into those. Like, am I really going to find a love of my life, or will I find my person? There, the questions go deeper, and I like to go to, let's work those questions out, because when we're in the records, we're moving energy is really what we're doing. We're not just information seeking.
Hmm.
So as we move energy, we want to get to where the energy is most beneficial to move,
Yeah.
right? And so there is an art to working in the records, which comes with the practice, right? To understanding what do I think I want to ask, and what do I really want to know?
Yeah. I think that's probably very helpful for people who are curious about this. But even just asking ourselves questions, I think that gives some good reflection on how we even ask ourselves certain questions and what and why we're asking what we're asking. So in the chat room, the question is, would you say part of accessing is through energetic clearing and preparing slash tuning yourself into a particular frequency prior to tapping in?
If you want to, yes. Some of there's a lot of ritual that a lot of us love to have.
Mhm.
And that ritual is something that we do, whether it's, you know, doing a smoke clearing, sage or rosemary or something like that. Or, I've got my little essential oils going there, and I have a candle going behind me that you can't see. But, they're rituals that we do, and the rituals take us into an energetic place that we just feel better to start with. So what I say to people is, if you want to do a ritual of any kind, do it, because you've optimized yourself. But the invocation itself takes you on that journey into the vibrational frequency of the Akashic Records. So there's nothing that's required.
Okay, so the invocation itself literally then supports the adjusting of your frequency.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let us know if that answers that for you. Seems pretty cut and dry. But with that, I also want to ask you about the trying. So let's say someone is just learning to go into the records, and we're conditioned to thinking like we have to try really hard at things. So, do you have any recommendations around that? Like people who think like, "Oh, I gotta try, I gotta," versus, do you go in pretty relaxed? Like, what
I
is your
do.
state? Yeah, what do you think may help us to be more open to receptivity?
Um, I think the energy of trying comes when we're nervous, worried, or super attached to what we're going to hear. Because let me go back to something you said before. I've had tons of clients who come for the first time and they say, "Well, I'm really nervous."
Mm,
And so we'll talk about that for a couple minutes. And the truth is, being in the Akashic Records would, if you observed a session, you might see me writing, you might see me closing my eyes or being quiet for a minute as I talk to the guys, but it's very conversational. Like you and I could be doing it right now, and it's a flow back and forth, and people don't know that until they're in there. But that energy of nervousness very often is because, and these are old paradigms that we're reworking right now, is they're worried if something isn't going well in their life, they've done something wrong somewhere else and they're going to get in trouble for it.
mm,
Like, oh, my karma is out to get me. Like, I'm not doing well in this area of my life. And so I have some karma from a past life. And so we feel like there's a punishment aspect of it.
yeah.
And that sits in an older paradigm that we're breaking through. I
Okay.
mean, if you can just, and I think the trying part of it is, if you open up to the idea that I'm in the presence of pure love, compassion, kindness, and understanding. And that in and of itself opens me up, and it's gentle. And I think the trying part of it also is, if we ask questions that are small,
Mm,
even if you have a question that's this big, what's the first part of that question you could ask? And then the next part and the next part. Very often we have a vision of where we'd like to go or what we want to know. And so it's like, what's that saying that I really always think is ridiculously odd? How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time?
yes. Yes.
It's such a weird saying, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it is a good visual for this. We see and feel where we want to be going, and we have this idealized vision of what we want ourselves to be, and our connectedness and our spiritual awakening and our healing and all of it. And we do it one question at a time.
Yeah.
And so, because every time we go in with a question and we're going to get some kind of response, you get information and the information satisfies here, but that's not where you change. You change because you've been in there and you've asked a question and you receive something and your energy shifts.
It's very interesting. So I wanted to get to the certain points that you mentioned, like releasing emotions that are feeling too big, these sorts of things that we can do on the records that, again, aren't commonly spoken about. But there is a question in the box I just want to ask Heather if she can clarify, because she says in 2017 she had a very intense and memorable experience in which she felt the records were being downloaded into her body. So my question is, are you saying like the entirety of your records? But anyway, she said the catch is that she learned in retrospect that she was going very manic. And then she said, any comments? But is that what you mean, that you had the experience of the entirety of your record? I've never heard that before. That's why I'm asking, just to clarify.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Have
because I
you?
didn't, yeah, and maybe they can clarify that because
Yeah.
I don't fully understand that question yet either. So, yeah,
Yeah.
hopefully we'll get some more on that.
Yeah. So as she clarifies that, could you talk about this? Like when we're going through certain things where we are having, really big emotions, we may have attachments to, certain stories or circumstances that we're in. How may going into the records support working through those kinds of energies?
Yeah, I love using the records to offload emotion. And I say that, but I want to put an asterisk or a caveat with it is emotions are good and our awareness around what we're feeling and being able to acknowledge it is good.
Yeah.
But sometimes we can get upset, activated, triggered in a cycle that we can't see the forest for the trees. We
Mm,
know we're not optimized. The emotion isn't supporting us. And I find and I teach this in my class, is one of the easiest things to do is open your records and talk it out. Be
yeah.
real, be honest, say fuck if you need to,
Yeah. Yeah.
like be angry if you need to. Just be real. Like I'm never going to forgive them. I hate them and I don't want to forgive them. Like be real. Like I'm hurt. And what happens when we're honest like that in the records is, again, we're not in a space where somebody's trying to fix you.
Hmm.
You don't have to. I encourage people, do not ask any questions in this circumstance. Go in, offload, talk about it. Whether it takes you 5 minutes or 25 minutes, it doesn't matter. Whenever you feel done, close your records and get out.
Yeah.
Now, the space of the Akasha is love, understanding. So it is understood vibrationally that being a human can be really hard at times.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but again, we're not getting any judgment back. They're not saying you shouldn't be feeling that way. Why aren't you forgiving them? None of that is there. And the way I visualize it is like I can take that muck that I'm feeling
Hmm.
and as I'm sharing it in the space, the love absorbs it. It's not in my space as much. Now,
Yeah.
if we have big stuff, if you have childhood trauma or, things like that, you might do this a lot. Go in every day for a while. And what happens is it's like the pressure slowly gets relieved,
Hmm.
released. And and it's again, we're not trying to erase emotions and say that they're bad. I'm talking about the ones that are in our way.
Yeah.
And we all know what that's like, right?
Yeah.
Because there are times when it's really appropriate to be extremely pissed off,
Yeah. I mean,
right?
it sounds like what you're saying is like we have this space where we can be extremely vulnerable without any fear or worry about being judged or these things. Because even if there are people in our lives that we're close to and we love them, they love us, we still have in the back of the mind a lot of times this fear of judgment or criticism or what are they really thinking. And so I mean, even that idea in of itself, having a space that is love no matter what, love unconditionally,
Right.
and you can be in your complete vulnerability, that has to
Yeah.
feel very weightlifting for
Yeah.
people.
Many years ago, I was talking about this experience in a class, and I talk about it all the time because this is one of the super easy things you can do early on in the records that make a clear difference. And you're not trying to say, ask your biggest, deepest, darkest secrets, but you're transforming yourself significantly energetically.
Yeah.
Because, let's just take the childhood trauma example. If you've had childhood trauma, which, like, come on in, the water's fine, that, everyone has it.
Yeah.
These are some of our core wounds here, is that we've been carrying it for a while. And most likely, when we were a wee one, when it happened, whatever that it was, and it's compounded in certain ways, and we didn't have the space or the understanding to express. And we certainly, in that situation, didn't have people who were there with us. No judgment against those adults that we had around us. They couldn't help us.
Mm.
And so it's a way of beginning to release some of that. Sometimes it's making the way for us to then heal those experiences in a new way or reframe them. But it's really a brilliant way to do it. And anyway, what I was saying is, years ago, I was teaching this in a class and talked to people. And actually, I think I did it online, but then I saw somebody later in person and they said, I did that. And they said it was so remarkable. They said, I went in and they described it like I do. They wrote in the records and they talked about the first day they went in and like how much they wrote out, like just unloading their feelings.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it was the next day or a few days later, but a short time later, they went in and did it again. And they found that they didn't have as much to write before they felt like they were done. And they talked about like 4 or 5 times, and they realized they opened the records to do it again, and they realized, oh, wait, I don't even remember what I was doing that for.
Wow.
So, and we're not trying to erase things that happened because they did. I've had
Yeah.
people say to me in the past, I want to go into the Akashic Records and erase what's in my past.
Ah.
I want to,
Yeah.
basically take white out or an eraser
Right.
because, and, when you talk to somebody about it, it's like, because something happened, if I think something happened even in a past life and it's impacting me now, if I erase the point of origin, then I'll be fine.
Mm.
But it's actually the thing that happened isn't, the thing that happened catalyzed something, but what it really brought about for us was the way we think about ourselves and the world around us.
Yeah.
And that is what has been put in place that that event brought about. So what we know is we want to, like, the changing the event doesn't change
Yeah.
anything. And we can't go race. It happened.
And
It's
I
just
mean, that
like,
could potentially change so many other things. I mean, like, you can't change one thing and it be isolated. It reminds me of the movie Back to the Future. Do you remember that? Yeah. But like you change one single event, it can change then, of course, the trajectory of everything else after that may look very different. But to your point, you still aren't going to necessarily avoid whatever that erasure was.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if you had, let's just stick with this lifetime and not even bring in past lives, but if
Yeah.
you had something early on in your life, that was traumatic, upsetting, and not resolved, and you moved forward. You've had other things pile on top of that that vibrationally are probably very similar in different ways.
Yeah.
And what we want to do is, again, we could say, oh, they did that thing to me. But what you're really living with is what you believe about yourself. Like, I'm not lovable, or people don't show up for me,
Hmm.
or what I want to have in life, I can't ever have. You
Right.
know, we get some foundational beliefs that come out of that. And that's where we want the change to happen, with
Yeah.
those beliefs.
Yeah.
So, no, we can't go erase your Akashic record.
Well, it's really interesting too, when you say about, let's say something comes up about an experience where there were people in our lives at another point in time, whether this life or otherwise, that weren't able to hold space for us in the way that we may have felt we needed. And it's interesting because, hearing you say that, I'm like, well, a lot of people feel that today. And so it's nice to even know again that regardless of if that's an ongoing feeling or expression, or it just comes later in life, no matter where these kinds of experiences pop up for us, there's still always, at any given time, you can go in and examine and understand in a way that helps to shift perspective. So could you talk a little bit about that? Because it sounds like, I mean, you're pointing to this and what you're sharing with us. In the Akashic Records, would you say that a big healing component of it, yes, the energy of the field, but is it also, have you found in working with people that it helps to give a different view, a different perspective, like people come to a different level of understanding?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm glad you said that, because I was just going to share something.
Oh, good.
Because I, and I'm going to back into this a little bit. You know, the paradigm that of healing and transformation that many of us have been in is this idea of, I have all these wounds, whether it's from this lifetime or past lives, or it's been passed down through the generations through my ancestors, and I'm imperfect because of it.
Mm-hmm.
And in order for me to get to the pearly gates, or whether I get to fifth dimensional consciousness or whatever it might be, I need to resolve everything. I need to be perfect. There's this level of perfection that we believe we need to have in order to get the goodies,
Mm-hmm.
whatever we view the goodies. And there are many of us, and those of you listening, whether it's live or listening in the future, I'd love to hear, are you sick of healing? Many of us are really tired of, okay, I healed that, but now there's this other thing that comes up, and I healed that, and this other thing that comes up. I believe that part of what we can do is, yes, we're going to keep healing these things, but we absolutely can move forward right where we are right now. And this is one of the things I'm really passionate about with the Akashic Records, not just resolving all the stuff from the past, but also it's this beautiful tool to be able to get that soul level advice from our higher self, our future self, our, all, and I know I just opened up something by saying future self, but that to make those steps forward right here, right now, in our perfectly imperfect way. I'm really passionate about that, because the Akashic Records really are supportive in giving us forward momentum. So I want to say that as background. So, but then I'm going to tell a little personal story here, that I've actually done just maybe in the last 6 months to a year. And it really was like mind blowing for me. Where's our little mind blowing emoji here?
Mm-hmm.
I was pondering the idea that, our soul chose us to come into this life as we are. Like, my soul said, you coming in as a female, Holly, and into this family, in this place, these opportunities, all of it. And same with you, Yolanda. Your soul said, I have choices here. Yolanda's my best choice
Mm-hmm.
for my soul's growth. Okay. Now, we still have a punishment perspective of being in this dimension, which I don't believe. But anyhow, I was pondering all that and I thought, if my soul chose for me to be me, what it then means is all the things that I think are hard that have happened in my life, there's something good there.
Hmm.
There's because I don't believe that I'm here to be punished. I'm here because my soul said there's no choice better than being Holly and all that that means. So I decided, I did this over many days, maybe weeks. I went into my records and started remembering challenging things that I was aware of. Going back to, experiencing abuse at 4
Hmm.
and sexual abuse at 4. And I didn't do a lot in one day, but I go in and here's what I said is, okay, I get in my records, I said, I get that this was hard from my human perspective. It's had a huge lifelong impact on me.
Hmm.
Um, how, who did I become through it? What gift did it give me? And I started looking at everything that I could remember in my life to reframe it from the point of view of what's right about it instead of what's wrong about it. And that's not to discount. From the human perspective, these things are hard. But if we get from that, okay, I'm having a hard human experience, but most of us, I'm going to invite everyone, if you think about hard human experiences, and you might be in one right now, there's something that you get pushed to do, think, be something else when your back's up against the wall.
Hmm.
Whether it's you go to a healer, you read a book, you go to a therapist, you start exercising differently or eating differently, or there are just a million ways that we go with that. But generally, in those really tough times, there's some new resource that we bring that comes forward or that we seek out because of that. So basically, I started reframing all the things I could remember, and I kept going in regularly for it. And then I looked back on it and I said, what's the theme? And this still gets me emotional. As I don't think I've ever talked about this out loud this way before. Maybe to a couple people, but the theme was that I've been very courageous in my life.
Wow.
And it, like, I got it when, they said, the thread through all of this is you've been courageous, and I can hold that energy differently, that I'm actually a courageous person.
Yeah.
And I've had some really hard things happen. Everyone does, right?
Hmm.
And yet through it, the transcendental energy through it is courage. And that's one of the strong energies I'm cultivating in this lifetime. So to me, that is such an exquisite gift that can come from working in the Akashic Records. That I now, it's not that I walk around every day thinking, oh, I'm courageous, but I know it's in me. It's in my heart that I've cultivated courage in this lifetime.
Yeah. But I mean, that's incredibly powerful because, I'm curious about how that would even feel in what you may be faced with, after finding that out, right? So after that realization, if you're then presented with something challenging in life, but somewhere in your consciousness now that has been unlocked, I imagine it would cause you to perhaps show up differently or be less judgmental or critical of yourself, or just something would be different in how you might deal with the encounter of a challenge with that awareness.
Sometimes it is different,
Yeah.
and sometimes my old patterns are there.
Hmm.
But if I go to my habitual, like, not where I'd like to be place, like I get upset about something or triggered, or, because I don't ever expect to not get triggered.
Yeah.
I mean, we live in this planet of this dimension of polarity. We're going to get triggered. We're going to be upset. the key is not so much about not getting triggered and not getting upset, but how that resilience, like how quickly can I get myself to where I want to be and feel like I have a choice.
Hmm.
And the times that I remember the courageousness that I've been shown in my records throughout my life, I can get there faster.
Yeah.
And it
Very
gives me that
interesting.
optimism. What was that?
I said, no, it's very interesting. I mean, again, this is like way beyond past lives, what it is that you're sharing. I just want to say Heather did clarify. She said, I knew nothing about the records and I still don't. I don't know if it was mine or all, just that it was a major download rushing into my body. So it may not have necessarily been the Akashic Records as much as she had a palpable experience of some type of
Some really
download,
powerful
some
energy.
very powerful energy. Yeah. So the other thing that you mentioned about the Akashic Records is that we can also go into this realm to find clarity around our next steps. So could you talk a little bit about that? Like, even if you have some examples from your own experience.
Yeah, yeah, okay. So the Akashic Records isn't just a tool to look back.
Wait, I'm sorry. I don't want to, because Nellie just said, thank you for sharing what you just shared, Holly. What a beautiful way of learning who are the past. I think I don't know, maybe learning who you were in the past or and having a deeper understanding of the past. But she wanted to thank you so much for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Carry on. Clarity around our next
Um,
steps.
yeah, it again, it's not only a retrospective tool. It's a tool that supports us in our present moment as well.
Mm-hmm.
And very often, even with clients, we go to past lives if we need to. We get ancestral information if we need to. But sometimes all that we need is we're just only dealing with this present life right now. And that is super powerful enough. But the other aspect of working in the records is future.
Mm,
And I like to always slow down when I talk about this. It's not future. I've already talked about this. That's set in stone.
yes.
Your future is not set in stone. Period. End of subject. Because for it to be that way, you'd have to give up free will, and nobody wants to do that.
Right.
I mean, we all might want to get a peek behind the curtain, but and that's our curiosity. But again, when we really want to peek behind the curtain, there's something else that we need to have in place so we can let go of that and trust ourselves that we're living the life we're supposed to live and we're not doing anything wrong and we're not going to get off track and all that kind of stuff. But the future is not set. However, when we talk about future in the records, it's future potential.
Hmm.
And it's at the idea is if you keep going the way you go, these are the things that are likely to happen. But there's never this, yes, you're going to marry them. Yes, you're going to get that job. No, you're not going to move to that place. No, you're not going to inherit that money or, whatever it might be. So it's not that yes and no place because we also have the ability, even if we know something might be coming down, we don't have to go in a linear way. We can meander all over and even meander for lifetimes.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of our free will. And as we're meandering, we're going to learn things. And as we go in a direct line, we're going to learn things. So it's all valuable. And we don't have tigers chasing at our heels. We're going to be fine. Timing is fine. We live in this timeless dimension, even though we're really bound by time. So we're all on track and we're not going to miss any signposts that we need to see. But future potentials, the future part of working in the records is we can get guidance or affirmation or confirmation that this is heading in the right direction, or without the yes, absolutely do this. we're never abdicating our ability to make our choice. So examples that I'll talk about is I use the Akashic Records a lot for my business, and I can talk about that because your Akashic Records, your business has Akashic Records also. But if I have something I'm working towards, I might have a goal. I might talk about it within my Akashic Records. I'll pick on the business part of it. And the future part of it is I start asking about what some of the next steps are.
Okay.
Not like I don't need to get from here to here tomorrow. And why? If I wouldn't be asking about if I was that vibrationally close. So we need to get ourselves there vibrationally one step at a time. And when we do that, then we can also course correct because right now we think we want this. We don't know if we really do. We think we do. And so part of it is this beautiful journey because we can course correct and say, oh, I'm getting closer. And what was I thinking? I want to go over here. And that's the beautiful thing. We're not bound by it. So that future part of it is this easiest way to say is finding what your next steps are about anything.
You know, I don't know how this popped to mind from what you just shared, but I love that, especially talking about the journey. And oftentimes, because I think about the times where we kind of force what we want and then we get it and we're like, oh my God, this is not what I thought it was going to be. And I don't want this anymore. But
Right.
that beautiful journey of having the awareness along the way that we can reroute or course correct, as you say. But it just came to mind as well. A lot of people in this realm want to clear their environments or have an understanding of the energies of their environment, such as their home. Can you talk a little bit about, any experience you've had with going in the records specifically to understand the energies of an environment, such as a home?
Well, your home has an Akashic record also. So you say, well, I don't own my home. If you're legitimately renting a home or leasing it or whatever, you have a right to be there. You can open up the Akashic records of that space and have a conversation with, these aren't just wooden studs and drywall and paint. This actually is a living being. And in feng shui, we know about that through feng shui. So we can work with that in a conversational way with the energy of our house to find out how to optimize it. Or, I've talked to people over the years who have that one room in their house. I don't, is it the paint? Do I need to change the furniture out? Is it the sunlight coming in the wrong way? Or, it's closest to this neighbor we hate and they don't really know. And they can go in and talk to the house or the apartment, whatever, and say, what's going on there? What can I do for you? What do you want to share with me?
Yeah. That's really interesting. I think that would be an interesting thing for people too, because there are, especially if you are, sensitive to energies, people do tend to notice where there's a feeling of comfort in their home and where something may feel off.
Right.
And often when we don't know clearly what it is, our analytical can then go wild and make up all of these stories of what it could potentially be, this weird energy, right? So, yeah. So
Yeah,
now
I
you
mean,
guys know that.
I haven't done a lot of buildings or houses recently. It's just clients haven't come with that in the last number of years. But in the past, I've done some, and it's really fascinating. I'll save that one for last. But I've been in houses records, and the client is asking about their house, and it might be that the room literally wants a different color paint on the wall,
Mm,
or like carpet needs to be ripped out because there's like energy in the carpet that isn't ideal, things like that. that, you might say, well, maybe logic could tell you that, maybe, but for some reason they're coming and asking about it and the house has something to share. And it also includes, like, if you have a yard, a
Mhm.
garden, it includes whatever property is represented by your address.
Yeah.
So it couldn't, like, I live on a half an acre. If I opened up the Akashic records of my house using the address, it's not just the house, it's the whole half an acre.
Right.
And so you access that too, which is really interesting. Especially if you've got a weird corner in your yard, or, like the plants are always dying there, or,
Yeah.
something like that. And some people are really curious about that. I did have an experience that everyone will hear this and understand why it was memorable. I was only speaking to the woman, but a couple lived in the house and they had trouble with a room in their house. And so it was a house that had a master suite, with the bedroom with an ensuite bathroom. And then the room they were asking about was, wait, let me say this the right way. It was just another bedroom.
Hmm.
Okay. It wasn't the master bedroom. Basically, the house said, you guys are sleeping in the wrong room. That they shouldn't be sleeping in the ensuite. They should be sleeping in this other room that she kept asking about. Now, I don't know if in the long run they decided to move out of the ensuite, but I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, because the room was a lot smaller, it just,
Yeah.
like, I don't even know what they did, but it was interesting. And again, we can hear that. We still have our free will choice. Like, hey, heck, I am not moving out of the ensuite to go move into the little room down the hall,
Right.
but we have that choice and we have that information.
That
And
is
maybe,
really interesting.
yeah,
I
and if you're
wish.
in your own records, the other thing I say is we have lots of room to negotiate in our records.
Yeah.
Like if you heard something like that, it's like you absolutely could say, well, you know what, I hear what you're saying, and maybe energetically that's a better bedroom for us, but we're not going to move out of there. So what else do you recommend? You can do that in the records. It's
I
not
like
just one
that.
and done.
But I'm
Take it
so
or leave it.
curious what happened. I wonder if they did move and if they noticed anything different. Yeah, it's interesting. But also that point too, that if we said, what is another alternative, instead of feeling like there's only one answer, that in of itself reminds me of you talk a lot just in your work in general about, potential and solution energy. And what you're saying right now, I think it really also highlights that there's more than one way. And a lot of times we get fixated on thinking there's only one way, or even if we're presented with an answer, whether from the records or elsewhere, we think one answer is like that, and that's the end of the story.
Right.
So, yeah, I'm really glad you say that.
Yeah, and that's that free will piece of it, and it's the willingness, and even if you're in your own records and you're not in your house's records,
Yeah.
and if for some, I mean, I firmly believe that our soul guidance team in the Akashic Records is not here to trick us. They're not here to hurt us. They're not here to ask us to climb Mount Everest tomorrow. They will
Right.
not do that. I have enough experience there that they will not give us anything we can't do.
Hmm.
However, we still may not feel like we want to or could, even if they've given it to us. So that's okay. What you do is just like if you said to me, Holly, can you go change all the tires on the car? I would say, you know what, Yolanda, I can't really do that.
Yeah.
I don't know how. So let's find another way.
Yeah.
So, hey, can you drive me and pick me up? I'm going to take the cars over somewhere to get them changed.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit of a negotiation, right? So it's okay to say in your Akashic records, I hear you. I hear that you're giving me this to do, but you know what? I can't, or that feels like too much.
Hmm.
And so, and then you can offer up your option, or you can say, what else is there? So again, they're not here to try to lure us into something difficult. It's just just a lot of us have a hard time wrapping our heads around the space that is truly loving and
Yeah.
kind and respectful and gentle. It's like, oh, you can't do it that way. Okay, there's going to be another way to do it. Like there's always these win-wins available to us.
I love that. And you know, um, there's so many, every time you say stuff, I keep having more questions come up in my mind. And I know there's some other points that you listed out for us to cover. I have another question, even with what you're saying. And I think relationships are like the easiest examples because we've all had them, no matter the type, the nature, you know, family, friends, romantic, whatever. We all have some sort of relationships, you know. And it's coming to mind to ask, a lot of people are curious about, like, you know, the whole idea, like what you said earlier, Holly was the best choice for me to come into for this lifetime, right? And a lot of people think like, why? Why would I have chosen this family? Why did I choose these friends? Why did I choose this partner? Do Is it common for people to go on the records to have an understanding of the origin of their relationship, or the maybe the benefit or the agreement with the different people in their lives?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I've done that many, 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 many times. I mean, I've had that question asked, and there is no one kind of pat answer or way to go with it, because the truth is that some of us have relationships that I always hesitate using the word karma because I feel like it's misunderstood,
Mm-hmm.
but they are karmic connections. They're also soul family connections.
Yeah.
And so let me just talk about karmic connections first.
Okay.
And that can overlap with soul family. But here's the thing with karmic connections is that the way karma is not a punishment cycle. Karma is you did something and there's a consequence. And using the very overused example of if there's a flame and I put my hand in it, the fact that my hand got burned is a natural consequence of that.
Mm-hmm.
The flame wasn't punishing me,
Right.
right? So it's just something happens and there's this result. And a lot of times when we talk about karma, it's the result isn't happening in the moment. Like if my hand got burned, there's a time delay, if you will. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's a time delay across lifetimes. So I so again, if we move away from the idea of karma being a punishment, here's when we have especially challenging relationships, and this is oversimplifying it, but the simplest way I could say in the Akashic Records, what we want to do is open up to who are we becoming? Who are we becoming? Or who are we asked to become? Or how are we breaking through to some next level of something that's good for us as a result of being in relationship with that person?
Mm-hmm.
And that does go into some of the soul family conversation because soul family, we have lots of them. We don't just have one. You know, there's soul family of light workers, there's soul family of birth, you know, your family of origin. There's, you know, if you knit, there's a soul family of knitters, you know, like, or marathon runners or whatever it is, you know. So we have lots of overlapping soul family groups. And there are themes within the group. There are soul themes within the groups.
Mm-hmm.
So understanding that in our soul family, what are we all learning the same?
Yeah.
What are we all learning that's the same in this group? And whether or not we like that one person or not, we're all still learning that same thing. So it's not so much like, what the hell is wrong with them? Or I've heard this a lot. What do I need to do to never come back in an incarnation with them?
Mm.
Okay, I get it. They may be the bane of your existence. That can absolutely be true. But the idea, the most empowered view of it is to be able to say, there's something I'm becoming through this interaction. If I stop focusing on them being the problem, start asking yourself, who can I become in this? who do I want to be in this situation? I ask myself that question a lot. Who do I want to be in this situation? Not from a I'm better or not,
Yeah.
but just like if this is happening for me, this goes back to my little courageous exploration. This is happening for me. Who do I want to be in this situation? And that is, especially in challenging relationships, it can be helpful. And you can ask those questions in the records or out
Well,
of the
do you
records.
happen to ask questions in phases of a situation? So let's say, for example, um, say someone's in a marriage or a long-term relationship or short-term, they're in a relationship. And in the beginning, perhaps you go into your records and you may have a curiosity about the connection, and maybe there is a bit of information that comes through. But then outside of the records, the relationship goes through whatever it goes through, and now you're in a different phase or cycle of that relationship. Then, if you went back into the records, is there then this possibility that there would be like new information revealed because now you've hit a certain mark and
Yes,
that, okay.
because your energy is different, the relationship energy is different,
Mhm.
and the other person is different, although we're not tapping into their records.
Yeah,
So the idea is that we're coming to it from a different energetic point of view
yeah.
with different curiosities, different questions.
Yeah, because it reminds me of how, you know, even if we didn't go on the records, how many of us go through different connections in our lives that end. And you
Yeah,
could start out like even in a friendship thinking this is my best friend, this is my person, and it's all great, but then something creates a shift and then a lot of people have a hard time with do I stay, do I not stay, what happened, all these things. But it seems like that would be interesting to go into the records throughout the different iterations of whatever the situation may be.
it can. And I know I've said this a few different ways during our conversation tonight is the the really the only point of focus is focusing all your questions on yourself.
Right.
Because generally when relationships are challenged, friends, family, birth family, work colleagues, lovers, whatever, the tendency is to focus on them and what's wrong with them.
Hmm.
And we're not there in our records to find out what's wrong with them
Right.
or their level of motivation. And you know what your question was also related to, you know, the saying of, you know, people come into your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime,
Yeah.
right? And so very often when somebody first comes in and we're in that high moment, whether it's a friendship or whether it's, you know, a new romantic relationship, we project a lot onto it.
Hmm.
This is my soulmate. This is
Right.
my twin flame. This is my, I've been waiting for them, or I've done all this healing, and this is the person who comes along next. And
Yeah.
therefore, it must be. So a lot of it is our projections that trip us up later on.
Yeah.
And remembering that regardless of our perspective in the beginning, we have these things that have transpired and they have their free will as well as us.
Right.
You know, they have the freedom to do things that might hurt us that they never would have done in the beginning.
Yeah.
Or, yeah, anyway.
If you're just joining earlier, Holly did let us know that we could go onto our records and just cry. Like you could
Yeah.
go in. So if you find yourself in that state, you could go to your, I mean, really, truly, you think about, you have said a lot. Again, you have talked a little bit about, touched on some past life, a smidge, but you have said so much. And I wonder if, this has opened up people's understanding of just how dynamic and diverse really the records are and what it is we can do and learn about ourselves in there.
And one of the things I've noticed since I first learned to read the Akashic Records, and for me, I was shot out of a cannon as soon as I learned. I was just like on fire with it. I loved it. I do want to say this. I feel like somebody, I don't know if it's somebody live or somebody needs to hear this, that when I first learned to read the records, the course I took, which is how I teach it also, is you do have experiences in your own records, and you also learn how to open records for other people, including pets and your home and your business. And why is that? Because you do not have to be good at working in your own records first before you go anywhere else. And that is part of a paradigm that I feel like we need to break down these paradigms is that when I first learned, I, again, like the class finished on a Sunday and I had to do some practice readings. On Monday, I was lining people up for, like, I was ready to go reading for other people,
Mm-hmm.
not so much with myself.
Yeah.
It took me, honestly, a year and a half for me to
Oh,
get as
wow.
comfortable reading my own records as it did reading other people's records.
Mm-hmm.
So people can come and they may not feel as confident in their own records, but that doesn't mean you can't open up the records for other people or your house or your sister's dog or,
Right.
or whatever it might be. And I say part of the reason that I like giving lots of experiences in the initial classes because you get to find where your the place it's easiest for you to read the records. Go
Yeah.
start there. And for some people, it could be you may feel super confident in your own records first, and you need to grow into reading for other people. That I had the opposite experience, but I've had plenty of people in my classes who they feel more comfortable first in their own.
And other
So
people's.
there's lots of room to grow and lots of ways to use the Akashic Records. And again, I stress really the positive next steps a lot.
Well, I want to bring up as well, because we mentioned in the beginning that there are various ways to access the records, and sometimes it's just finding even the method of going in that might be better for you or some guidance. So the reason I say that is because prior to, so Holly and I met 10,000 years ago. She had a healing
Probably,
studio. I
literally.
know. Yeah. But in this lifetime, it was a very long time ago, maybe like 2011, something like that. Um, and she had a healing studio in San Diego, and they offered uh, healings there, and you did your channeling work there, and you also taught the Akashic Records. So I found her because I had heard about the Akashic Records, and I bought a book about it first. And the book I bought had an invocation of how you get in and da da da. And I tried it on my own from the book, and I mean, I did what the book said. I would get like 2 to 3 sentences, and I was just like, "That's it." And I would write it down. I would write down what was coming, and I stayed with it. I just was like, maybe I have to do this repetitively before it really pours in, right? I did for a while, and it was like maybe I got to a paragraph at some point, and I was like, I just there was something I it just wasn't breaking through fully for me. And then I found Holly. I went to her studio. I took a class. And in the class itself, I had some experiences that were very shocking. So we had to do partner exercises where we weren't writing it, but we had to, like you said, speaking back and forth with another person. And that was a very cool experience because it was the first time experiencing going into someone else's records, which was very different than my own. And actually, that was initially easier for me. So then after the class, we also had where we had to practice for like 30 days or something like this, free sessions. So I did the same as you. I booked sessions and I read for other people, and it was very conversational, it was easy, fine. After that, or maybe even during the same time, I tried again going back into my own, but with going into other people's, it was vocal, conversational. Going into my own, I would always write. So over time, it got to a point where downloads were coming so quickly that my hand would start hurting from writing so much. I mean, it would be pages. And I was like, whoa, I can't tell you how long it took for that to happen, but it happened. And then I got fascinated. I was going in there asking about chakras and this and all kinds of things. But my point is that it doesn't always, it's not always mind blowing up front. Some people it is, but for someone like me, it took a while before I had the floodgates open, so to speak. And then that's really when I fell in love with it.
Yeah, and I think that also it doesn't always have to be a lot of volume,
Yeah.
because when we talk about energetic change being at the higher order level than the information,
Yes.
we're information seeking beings. That's how our culture on the planet at this time, we revere the mind and education and information. And even more so now with the expansion of the internet over the last 40 years. We are information hounds. And so we feel like information changes us, and information doesn't. Information just gives us data. And so if you got 5 words by being in your Akashic records, like basically like a short sentence, but
Mhm.
it was enough for you to get it, and that's where your energy changed, you don't need any more.
Well,
And
that's
so
good to know.
sometimes what was that?
I said, that's good to know. That's not what happened to me, but that's really good. That's really good for all of us to know.
Yeah, I mean, because
Yeah.
literally, if you ask a question and you see, or you feel that you hear a word, and
Yes.
that word is enough, like, I got it. That's it. You don't need more,
Mm-mm.
because we just need that place where the truth is. And if it's a word, if it's a memory, if it's pages of notes, whatever it takes,
Yeah.
because we're looking for the energetic shift more than a ton of information.
Right. Well, I will say too, because I want to talk about the evolution within the records, because um, the system that I learned initially was, I guess, the same system you learned. I don't know if it was the first way you learned, but you were hosting a teacher there at the studio. That's how I learned. And there were certain parameters about what you could or could not get in the records.
I
And
learned in the same class you
yeah,
did.
I don't think so. I think maybe it was the one before me, because didn't, well,
Oh,
maybe,
maybe she came out more than
yeah,
once.
yeah, yeah,
Okay, maybe
yeah,
so.
yeah, because you weren't like part of the, you were there, but you were more of like,
Okay, then
yeah,
maybe that was the second time she came out.
yeah.
Okay.
But there were in that, I'll say lineage, I don't know, in that style, there were some parameters, but I just was like, okay, well, I'm just gonna see out of curiosity. And so that's why I always talk about I went in the records to learn about the chakras and these things. Now, that wasn't like said as something I could go in to learn about, but I absolutely did and I loved it. But I say that to say about how you mentioned our individuality and how we may receive information, what we may experience, especially over time as we build this relationship going in that realm. And you have also now, you know, gotten to a space where you teach a method that is very resonant to you. And you also expanded or found out, not by choice, but found out that you could expand more into the records or what they even encompass. So could you talk a little bit about that? I didn't see it's like
Sure.
quarter up. We have things to say.
I know. Yeah, so I think a lot of us relate to the Akashic Records or the people who are ready to relate to the Akashic Records, we relate to it as a tool to help us understand our human experience, and in any variety of ways. And so I believe that we've had a lot of focus historically, even though the history isn't that long, as I've said. I mean, obviously, there's a very long history with the Akashic Records, but in terms of it being readily accessible, like I was mentioning, that's been more since the 80s.
Yeah.
it's been very earth-based and and earth-based in terms of even our past lives, our earth-based lives.
Hmm.
And so that's how I was working in it for a long time. Now, as you mentioned earlier on, I'm a channel and I channel the High Council of Orion, and they're a group of non-physical beings who are in a realm of consciousness that already went through their ascension process over 1 million years ago.
Hmm.
So I've been channeling them. Actually, I started channeling them just a few months before I learned how to read the Akashic Records. Like 2011 was a huge year for me. That's when all of this stuff opened. And then later on in 2011 was when Ishara came through, who is, Yolanda and Ishara and I were together way back in the day in Egypt. And I don't know if I've ever actually said that to you,
I
Yolanda.
know you and I were. I didn't know Ishtar too.
Yeah,
No.
Ishara was there too. And so she's a beautiful being of light that she and I have had a soul connection for eons. And so through the channeling work, I have a very galactic, universal perspective. And through my work in the records, at some point, I was told, the records you're working in aren't the only thing.
Mm.
There's actually layers of it, and it's fine to access that earth-based layer, but there's actually I'm going to find a better term for this because it's limited to call it the galactic records, but that's what it's been called so far. And so it's a layer, if you will, that it's not a different layer somewhere else, but it's inclusive of the consciousness of planet Earth, but it's a higher order level that includes information about lifetimes or energetic incarnated experiences. But by incarnate, it doesn't necessarily mean in a physical body, that we've had in other planets, dimensions, and places in that field of all that is.
Yeah.
And we bring those gifts to this moment also. And so so the work has expanded to include that.
So there's something I want to ask you about this, but I want to tell you what's in the chat first, really quick. So, one comment is, I love that we can dive into the records for our pets. The other is, hi from Massachusetts. The first time I went into the records for someone, I got a single image that was very powerful, and I wasn't ready yet to convey the message to my friend. And then they just have an ellipsis. So, have you ever, well, we'll circle back around to if you've ever had any hesitation, or was it ever challenging to deliver a message or something like that. But I wanted to ask you, with the galactic, does it feel any different than the space within the Akasha that you had been used to working in?
At this point, no, but initially, yes.
Mhm.
Because it's been a number of years that I've been navigating in that space. So I think I'm acclimated to it, and I could feel the difference.
Yeah.
But it's really, we're just including more dimensional reality, more information. So just yesterday, I was opening up, and I had a client session and opened their records via the galactic way, because they're two
Okay.
different ways. And I'm slowly transitioning all of it to just being galactic. And so in the course of the session, you could say, well, this was very much like an earth-based, if you will, Akashic Records session, because that was the focus of it. Did a little bit of information come in that was relevant from other lifetimes and gifts that they're bringing? Yes, that wasn't the big focus of it. But what I find is it does hold a bigger container of energy, so that if there's something like, if somebody has had a lot of Pleiadian experience and they're bringing Pleiadian gifts here, and they've chosen to be here on the planet with their Pleiadian gifts, and that's important for them to know now, it will
Hmm.
come through.
Wow. So if people want to have readings with you, do they get to specify, or it's just whatever comes through comes through? Or do they say, Holly, I want to book a regular Akashic record reading, or I want to do a galactic one?
Well, right now, there's nothing that indicates Galactic Akashic
Okay.
Records on my website.
Okay.
It's in process. I've had some big experiences in my life, largely that my father passed, and
Yes.
the most of the last year has been helping manage his estate as trustee. Not that everyone needs to hear that, but what it's done is in the early part of this year, there was a big revamping underway on my business last year, and it's just has a little bit of a pause button on it
Yeah.
while I'm doing this work for the family estate, and so I'll get back to it. So the galactic isn't evidenced on my website. If somebody who's listening here asks for it, they absolutely we can do that.
Yeah. Well, I want to make sure we get in as well because can you believe we're only 9 minutes away from 2 hours?
No.
You do have an upcoming class just next week.
Yes.
And so could you tell us a bit about the class? And actually, while you tell them, I'm going to find the link and put it in the chat box. But
Oh,
if
I
you can
have
go
it right
ahead.
here. Well, I don't know how to put it
No,
in
you
YouTube
don't worry
chat.
about the tech stuff. You just go ahead and do your
Okay, you're
tell
so
us.
sweet. Yeah, so the course that's being offered next week is actually not a course, it's a workshop. It's a 2-hour workshop called Portal to the Akashic Record. And a portal is, an entry point, right? And so this is a introductory workshop finding out about the Akashic Records. There'll be a little bit of what you've heard here, but it's excuse me, a lot more Akashic Records 101. But what I really particularly love about it is that during this, I will introduce you to the way I teach people to enter the Akashic Records, and you will open your own Akashic Records, and everyone who's there will go on a guided experience in their own records. So, right off the bat, you'll be able to have this experience in this 2-hour workshop. And it gives you a sense of what it is. And I don't want to overpromise, but most people feel like, wow, okay, yeah, actually, there is something there. And I did receive something because this guided experience, you will ask to receive something specific. Excuse me. And so that's what the 2-hour course is about or workshop is about. And to be totally transparent, because I like to be transparent, the truth is that I am teaching, I only do this once a year. I'm teaching my foundation course in September.
Yes.
And that's coming up in September. And then for people who are interested in adding this to a practice or creating a practice with this, I've had people who are energy healers, life coaches, therapists of different sorts. Therapy, you've got to be careful with this, but who add this to their practice or start a practice with it in October. If you've taken the foundational course, there's a shorter practitioner course where we just focus on the nuances of becoming a practitioner.
And I see that that is September 13th. And since we're here, I'm going to put that in the chat as well. But definitely next week, that's a great entry. And 2 hours is, I mean, we've been here together for 2 hours today. So you guys can see that goes by so quickly. Let me just put this. Yeah. And then when this is over, just for everyone who's here that knows, the whole chat will disappear. So if you give me like 10 minutes once we're done, I will go back in and add all of Holly's contact information, her website, her Instagram, the links again to the upcoming classes. And the one next week, that's in the evening, isn't it?
Yeah, it's on Thursday evening.
Yeah.
It's at 8 p.m. Eastern time, other side of the country, 5 p.m. Pacific.
Yes. Okay, perfect. And for people who can't attend live, they'll get access to the recording even if they're
Yes,
registered. Okay,
yes.
perfect.
Yeah, so
Um,
if the timing doesn't work out, you can still register and just watch it when you can.
Yes. And, funny enough, we didn't do this on purpose, but Holly also has a new podcast, The Alchemy of Awakening. And it's incredible. Just as informative as she's been here tonight, she is on the podcast with different topics every week. But you just had a podcast come out today. Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit about the episode, or do you not remember?
I don't remember.
It's all right. I'll put the link to that
I
too.
think it actually has to do with the, because remember,
Yeah.
there's one coming out next week also, because I did two this month, and I'm
Yes.
already planning the one for next month. And so I'm really sorry, I don't remember what it, I thought it was about the Akashic Records.
Yeah, it is. It's living full out with the Akashic Records, actually. Yeah, so I'm going to put the link to that as well. Because you do. One thing about you, you are thorough. You really are. And I appreciate that. No, really, truly. Because I think a lot of times we can go to classes and events and walk away confused or not fully understanding. So I think you do a really great job of making sure that people walk away with clarity around this work. And I have to tell you all as well, again, I've known Holly for years, and I can say, I can vouch, she is an incredible teacher. So if you get a chance to go to any of her offerings, you won't be disappointed. Let me see. I just want to check to make sure if there's anything else in the chat room that we missed before you go. Did you have anything you want to tell us in wrapping up?
Yeah, there's one thing that just keeps niggling at me, and so
Yeah.
I just wanted to say this, and maybe everyone's had a sense of this already, is the Akashic Records is really this beautiful, I'm going to say spiritually respectful place.
Hmm.
So you cannot open anyone else's records without their permission.
Yeah.
So again, you have that annoying colleague and you know what their name is. You can't open their records. So it's very spiritually respectful and sacred in that way.
Yeah.
And I love that about it. And so focus on yourself. You are ground zero of where the greatest transformation is. And I think that's a lot of our gift is how do I become a better version of myself? And then I don't have to worry as much about what everyone else is doing or not
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah.
And the
That's a
Akashic Records can really support us in that.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing about it. I think a lot of people probably don't necessarily look at it as a tool for self-development, and it is in a lot of ways. I mean, there's a lot we can learn about ourselves, and even as you say, that was one of the things I loved was sitting in the energy of because it does do something and it's hard to articulate and we all have our individual experiences, but even just being in that frequency, you have an awareness of something, an awareness of something. I'll just say that. Go to the class and find out what it is now. I have to thank you so much, Holly. I know on the East Coast, what, it's 9 o'clock for you now?
Just about, yeah, a couple minutes
Yes.
before, yeah.
I thank you so much for coming to have the happy hour today. It's fun
Well,
as
thank
always.
you.
Yes. And thank you to everyone in the chat. I know there are other people watching live that didn't necessarily say anything in the chat, but thank you to all of you for showing up. And if you think anyone would enjoy this conversation or would benefit from learning more about Holly's work, share the link. And like I said, in about 10 minutes, I'll have everything in the description where you can contact Holly and I'll put the links to the classes again.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone, and so much love for you, Yolanda. Thank you.
I love you to pieces. We'll